The storage facility emailed to say my unit had been cleared and reassigned. The inventory list attached wasn't mine, but the access code was no longer valid. I drove there anyway. The gate recognized my license plate, but the keypad rejected the number I'd used for years. Inside the office, the manager scrolled, nodded, and said the change had been confirmed by the authorized contact. She pointed to the screen and asked if I needed a copy of the release. I didn't ask who the contact was. I already knew. 3 months earlier, he'd come into my life carrying a ladder. I'd been trying to replace a light over the back deck when it slipped, crashing into the railing. He was walking his dog past the house, saw the mess, and propped the ladder back up without asking. Checked the wiring. Said it wasn't safe. Went home and came back with the right fixture in his hands, still in the box. He didn't charge me. He left the old light neatly stacked by the door. After that, he appeared when something needed doing. Replacing a warped door. Organizing the garage after a storm pushed water through. He worked quietly. Took pictures before and after. Sent them to me even if I was in the next room. I was used to managing things myself. He didn't challenge that. He filled gaps I'd been ignoring. The first time he saw the storage unit was because I mentioned I needed to clear it out eventually. Old furniture. Boxes from my last move. My mother's things I hadn't sorted yet. He offered to help. Said it was easier with a plan. We went on a Saturday. He labeled boxes while I opened them. Didn't comment on what I kept or what I let go. When I got tired, he finished stacking. Took notes. Said we could come back later. He asked if I wanted him to handle the billing. The unit was under my name, but the autopay was a mess. I said sure. Gave him the login on my phone while we sat on the concrete step outside. He handed it back when he was done. Said it was cleaner now. After that, he stopped by more often. Stayed for dinner. Slept over when we worked late. He brought a toothbrush but didn't leave it. Left early when I had meetings. Learned where I put things. The closeness came through utility. Through him knowing where everything lived. When I traveled for work, he checked on the house. Watered plants. Picked up mail. He suggested we consolidate some things to save time. Storage, subscriptions, the overflow that followed me from place to place. He said it was temporary, just until things settled. He had a way of making that sound like care. The storage paperwork came later. A short form, update of contact details, emergency access. He highlighted where I needed to sign. Said it would make it easier if something happened while I was gone. I signed at the kitchen counter, phone buzzing beside me. I didn't go back to the unit after that. There was no need. He said he'd started sorting, sending things I wanted to keep to the house, donating the rest. The email from the facility listed a date I didn't recognize. Clearance complete. Items removed. Unit reassigned. In the office, the manager printed the release and slid it across the counter. The signature at the bottom was mine. Outside, my phone vibrated with a message from him. A photo of the living room. A chair I hadn't seen in years placed by the window. Caption, found this in the back. Thought you'd want it here. I stared at the picture, then at the locked gate, then back at the inventory list in my hand. Half the items were marked disposed. I didn't remember deciding that. I didn't remember being asked. I drove home with the paper on the passenger seat, the empty space in the car where things used to be, trying to place the moment when my things had stopped being where I put them. After the storage email, he didn't avoid the subject. He absorbed it. He met me at the door that evening with dinner already unpacked. He said the facility had been changing policies. He said he'd handled it so I wouldn't have to deal with them calling me while I was traveling. He said most of what had been there wasn't worth paying for anymore. I nodded. It sounded efficient. He showed me the boxes he'd brought back. A lamp I'd forgotten I owned. 2 framed photos wrapped carefully in towels. The chair from the picture, angled toward the light like it had always lived there. He waited for my reaction before moving anything else. The rest, he said, had been donated, or disposed of. He used those words without emphasis. The days filled themselves. He fixed things I didn't realize were broken, replaced a cracked outlet cover, organized the hall closet so coats hung by season. When I reached for something and found it exactly where my hand expected it to be, I didn't question how that happened. We didn't talk about the storage unit again. There was nothing left to talk about. He started staying over more often. Not officially. Just until it made sense not to leave. He didn't bring more things. He used what was already there. He learned the rhythms of the house, the way I shut doors, the way I liked the lights low in the evening. When I mentioned a conference coming up, he offered to house sit. He said it was easier if someone was there. Packages. The garden. He said it would keep everything running the way it should. I gave him the garage code before I thought about it. While I was gone, he sent photos the way he always did. Small updates. A trimmed hedge. The dog asleep on the couch. A stack of mail sorted into neat piles. One message mentioned that he'd moved a few more things out of the back room to make space. Nothing important. Just overflow. When I got back, the back room was empty. Not cleared. Resolved. The shelves bare, the floor swept. The boxes that had lived there since my divorce were gone. He said he'd consolidated them with the rest of the storage items before the clearance. He said it didn't make sense to keep duplicates. I asked which duplicates. He listed them calmly. Kitchenware I hadn't used. Paperwork I'd already scanned. Clothing that didn't fit my life anymore. He didn't ask if he was right. He said it like a summary. I didn't contradict him. The intimacy grew in the space that cleared. We slept better. The house felt lighter. He knew where things were faster than I did. When I couldn't find a document, he reached into a drawer and handed it to me. He'd labeled it weeks earlier. There were moments I noticed and let pass. A contractor calling him instead of me. A neighbor thanking him for coordinating something I hadn't known needed coordination. My name appearing second on a utility email, he forwarded to me with a note that it was handled. He framed everything as relief. One afternoon, I came home to find him on a call in the kitchen. He covered the phone when he saw me and mouthed that he was almost done. When he hung up, he said it was the storage facility again. Final confirmation. He said everything was closed out cleanly. He handed me a folder. Inside were scanned receipts, donation confirmations, a summary he'd typed up of what had gone where. It was thorough, organized, finished. I thanked him. That night, as we were getting into bed, he asked if I wanted him to take over the rest of the household accounts too, just to simplify. He said I had a lot going on. He said it didn't mean I was giving anything up, just that he'd manage it for me. I said we could talk about it. He smiled and turned off the light. In the dark, I reached for my phone to check something and realized I didn't know which email address the storage notices had been going to. I scrolled back through my inbox. There were none. They'd all come through him. I put the phone down and went to sleep, telling myself that was normal now, that this was what it looked like when someone took care of things. The next change came dressed as housekeeping. A letter arrived from the city about updated property records. Not urgent, just confirmation. I left it on the counter with the rest of the mail. He picked it up, opened it, and said it was a duplicate notice. Said he'd already responded online when he consolidated the utilities. I asked when he'd done that. He said while I was gone. He said it was easier to align everything under one contact so nothing slipped. He said the city portal was clunky and he didn't want me dealing with it. He set the letter back down, already opened, and moved on to something else. That week, he suggested we finally clear the remaining paperwork from the house. Deeds, insurance, old warranties. He said it was better to know where things stood. He spread everything out on the dining table, sorted into neat stacks. When I hesitated over a document, he told me which ones mattered and which ones were outdated. He didn't rush me. He waited. There was a form in the stack I didn't recognize. Authorization to manage property-related correspondence. Temporary. Administrative. He explained it like a favor to me. Said it would keep notices from getting lost. Said it didn't change ownership. Just communication. I signed where he indicated, pen already uncapped in his hand. After that, letters stopped coming to me entirely. Things still arrived. They just arrived to him. He mentioned them in passing. A rate adjustment. A maintenance notice. A confirmation of something closed out. He spoke in conclusions, not processes. The house continued to change quietly. A cabinet reorganized. Files relabeled. A safe moved from the back room to the hall closet. When I asked why, he said it was more central. Easier to access if needed. I didn't ask what needed meant. The midpoint arrived without wait. Without drama. It came as a scheduled appointment he added to my calendar without asking. Meeting with the estate planning office. Just to review. He said it was smart at our age. He said he'd already spoken to them and booked a slot that worked around my calls. He said we didn't have to commit to anything. I went. We sat side by side in a clean office with neutral art on the walls. He spoke clearly, presented documents, explained context. I listened and nodded. When the advisor asked who should be the primary point of contact moving forward, he looked at me. I said his name. It felt practical. He was already handling things. He was better with details. The advisor nodded and adjusted the form. Later, there were signatures. Not dramatic ones. Updates. Alignments. Clarifications. He slid the pages toward me when my attention was elsewhere. I signed where I was shown, trusting that I'd already agreed to the logic of it. We left with a folder between us. After that, the house felt quieter in a different way. Not lighter. Settled. I noticed it first when I tried to access the safe and the code didn't work. I mentioned it casually. He said he'd updated it. Said he'd forgotten to tell me. He opened it easily and handed me what I'd been looking for. I didn't ask for the new code. The next day, I received a forwarded email from the storage facility. Final notice already closed. No action required. It was addressed to him. I was copied after the fact. When I searched my inbox for earlier notices, there were none. That evening, I watched him lock the front door with a new deadbolt I hadn't noticed before. He said the old one had been sticking. He tested it twice, satisfied. I stood behind him, keys in my hand, realizing they no longer matched the lock. I didn't say anything. He turned, smiled, and kissed my cheek like everything was in place. I told myself it was. I told myself that this was what it looked like when someone took responsibility. I didn't tell myself what I no longer had access to. After the locks changed, he started narrating the house to me. Not explaining. Informing. He'd mentioned things in passing. The water heater inspection scheduled. The insurance renewal submitted. The security upgrade completed. He spoke as if these were updates on weather, not decisions that altered how the house worked. I noticed I stopped receiving mail addressed to me. Not abruptly. Gradually. Utility bills appeared already opened on the counter with a note that they were paid. City notices came as forwarded PDFs, headers trimmed. When I asked where the originals were, he said they were archived digitally. Said paper was inefficient. One afternoon, I came home early and found a realtor's card on the entry table. Not hidden. Not displayed. Just there. I asked why it was there. He said he'd asked a question. Nothing binding. Just curiosity about market movement. He said it was smart to know options. I didn't argue. I asked what the answer was. He told me numbers that sounded reassuring. Said the house had appreciated. Said timing mattered. Said we weren't doing anything yet. The garage felt different. Less cluttered. Empty shelves where things used to sit. When I asked where the paint cans were, he said he'd disposed of expired ones. When I asked about the latter, he said he'd lent it to a neighbor. Which neighbor, I asked. He named one I barely knew. The intimacy stayed intact. He still cooked. Still touched my back when he passed behind me. Still asked how my calls went. Still slept lightly beside me, phone on the nightstand face down. What changed was sequence. Things happened first. Then I was told. The first time I needed something urgently, a passport copy for a last-minute trip, I went to the safe. The code still didn't work. I called him from the hallway. He said he was out but could come back later. He asked what I needed. I told him. He said he'd email it to me. He did within minutes. Crisp scan. Correct page. I asked for the code again. He said we'd set a time to go over everything together. He said it made sense to do it properly. He said tonight was busy. Tonight stayed busy. A letter arrived from the county assessor. This one he hadn't opened yet. I recognized the envelope and opened it myself. Assessment update. Change confirmation. The owner line listed both our names. The contact line listed only one. His. I asked him about it while he was washing dishes. He didn't turn around. He said the county required a single correspondent. He said he'd chosen the option that reduced delays. He said it didn't affect ownership. I asked if my name could be added back. He said it could, but it would complicate things. He said the system preferred clarity. The next day, a neighbor asked if I was moving. She said she'd heard something. I asked from whom. She said from him. She said he'd mentioned we were exploring options. When I confronted him, he said people talked. He said it didn't mean anything. He said I was reading into it. He said we were fine. That evening, he asked if I'd noticed how calm the house felt lately. He said it was because things were aligned. He said this was what stability looked like. I looked around at the rooms, the cleared shelves, the labeled drawers, the locked doors I didn't open anymore. I said yes. Later that night, I tried my keys again in the front door after taking out the trash. They didn't turn. I knocked softly, not wanting to wake the neighbors. He opened it right away. He smiled and said the new deadbolt was more secure. He said he'd get me a copy of the key. He closed the door behind me and slid the bolt into place with a sound I hadn't learned yet. I stood there, coat still on, listening to it click, understanding that the house was no longer something I entered by default. It was something I was let into. After that night, I started noticing how often I waited. Not for permission, for confirmation. If I needed something from the house, I asked where it was instead of looking. If I wanted to change something, I mentioned it instead of doing it. He responded quickly. Always helpful. Always already thinking about it. The realtor card disappeared. The conversation didn't. He started referencing numbers casually. Comparable sales. Interest rates. Timing windows. Not as plans. As awareness. He said it was good to be informed. I stopped receiving calls from service providers. The landscaper texted him directly. The cleaning service confirmed with him. When I tried to change a date, they apologized and said they needed to check with the account holder. I didn't correct them. One morning, I couldn't find my passport. I checked the drawer where it had always been, then the desk, then the safe I still couldn't open. I asked him while he was putting on his jacket. He said it was secured. He said he'd moved all important documents to one place so nothing got lost. He said travel was unpredictable these days. I asked where that place was. He said he'd show me later. Later didn't come. Instead, a showing did. I came home to unfamiliar shoes by the door. Voices in the living room. He introduced me as his partner. Said we were just looking. No pressure. The realtor smiled and asked if I had questions. I didn't know what to ask. After they left, I told him I hadn't agreed to showings. He said it wasn't a showing. Just information. He said no one had signed anything. He said I was safe. That word again. The next letter from the city came addressed to him only. Notice of record update. Nothing actionable. Just confirmation. I opened it anyway. My name was still there. Reduced to a line. Secondary. Not removed. Just displaced. I tried the locks again that night. All of them. None of my keys worked except the garage, and even that hesitated. I asked him for a copy. He said he'd had trouble getting extras cut. He said the hardware store machine was down. He said he'd handle it. The following week, he went away for 2 days. A work thing. He left me with the house and a list taped to the fridge. Trash days. Alarm code. A number to call if anything came up. The alarm code was new. I didn't ask how long it had been that way. While he was gone, I searched. Not frantically. Methodically. Drawers. Files. Digital folders. Anything with my name on it. I found copies of things I recognized. Nothing original. Everything scanned. Labeled. Archived. When I tried to log into the city portal, the password reset went to an email address I didn't use. When he came back, I didn't confront him. I told him I felt disconnected. He listened. He said that happened sometimes when roles blurred. He said it didn't mean anything had gone wrong. He suggested we formalize things a bit. Just to clear tension. Align expectations. He said it would protect both of us. He placed a document on the table the next morning. 1 page. Simple language. A temporary agreement about household management. Decision authority. Representation. Revocable with notice. He said it was just to put words around what we were already doing. I read it twice. I signed it once. That afternoon, the garage code changed. I found out when I tried to get in and the keypad blinked red. I stood there long enough for a neighbor to ask if I needed help. I said no. When I got inside, he was on the phone. He covered the receiver when he saw me and mouthed that he was almost done. I waited in the kitchen, keys in my hand, listening to him talk about next steps, about timelines, about moving forward. He hung up and smiled like nothing had shifted. I smiled back because at that point, smiling was the fastest way to get back into my own house. The notice came taped to the front door, folded once, tucked under the new deadbolt. Final walkthrough scheduled. Access required. I stood on the porch reading it while my keys rested uselessly in my palm. The paper didn't say sold. It didn't say listed. It didn't explain anything. Didn't need to. Inside, he was on the phone. I could hear his voice through the door, calm, precise, using my address like it belonged to him. I knocked once. Not hard. He opened the door just wide enough to step out and closed it behind him. He said we didn't need to do this outside. He said the walkthrough was procedural. He said everything was moving faster than expected. He said this was good news. I asked where my passport was. He said it was secured. I asked where my mother's letters were. He said they'd been archived. I asked when he planned to tell me the house was being sold. He said he'd told me we were exploring options. He said I hadn't objected. He said silence counted. I tried the door behind him. The handle didn't turn. I asked for my keys. He said that wasn't practical right now. I asked to go inside. He said the realtor was coming any minute and it would complicate things. He said it was better if I waited. The realtor arrived with a clipboard and a practiced smile. She nodded at me like I was expected but not required. She asked him if everything was ready. He said yes. She asked if I'd be joining. He said I decided not to. I didn't correct him. They went inside together. The door closed. The new deadbolt slid home from the other side. I stood on the porch until the realtor left. Until the light shifted. Until my phone buzzed with a notification from the city portal. Change of correspondence confirmed. I sat on the steps and opened it. The house was still listed under my name. Owner of record. That line hadn't moved. Everything else had. Later that evening, he texted to say the walkthrough went well. He said the buyers were flexible. He said we were protected. He said I could pick up personal items tomorrow if I made a list. He asked me to be specific. I went to a hotel with a notepad and wrote down what I could remember owning. It wasn't much. In the morning, I returned to the house with the list. He met me at the door. Stood inside while I stood out. He handed me a box he'd prepared. Labeled. Neat. Inside were clothes he thought I still wore. A mug I liked. A folder of copies. No originals. I asked about the rest. He said this was what made sense. He said the house needed to be staged. He said this didn't have to be difficult. I took the box and left. The sale closed without me present. I learned the date from a forwarded confirmation sent to the wrong email address. The proceeds were deposited where they were supposed to be. Not to me. The house was quiet when I drove past it weeks later. Lights off. Windows bare. No trace of the life I'd lived there. My name was still on the county site for a while. Then it wasn't. The storage unit was gone. The documents were gone. The keys were gone. What remained was a single address I could no longer enter, and a list of things I once owned that no longer existed anywhere I could reach. The last message from him came after everything finalized. Said only this: "You'll feel better once it's finished." It was,